my pleasure today to be joined by West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrisey. Thank you so much for being with us, Attorney General.
Virginia, it's great to be with you today. It's an exciting atmosphere here at CPAC. Just got off a panel, and it's just wonderful to be back in this kind of post-COVID world where people are interacting again. So
That's
terrific
right.
talking to you.
Yeah, well, we're excited to have you. We have a lot to discuss
Oh, yeah.
today. West Virginia has been busy recently. You have been busy. I want to start by talking about West Virginia's fight against the fentanyl crisis.
Yeah.
The fentanyl crisis is something that's affecting states across the country. In fiscal 2022, more than 14,000 pounds of fentanyl was seized at our southern border already this fiscal year. There's been 12,000 pounds. This is an issue that's affecting everyone. How is it affecting the people of West Virginia?
Well, it's slaughtering a whole generation of West Virginia citizens. And for all those listening across the country, know that the border catastrophe affects West Virginia most directly through the drug epidemic. And we know so much of the base ingredient derives from China, and then it's shipped over to the Mexican drug cartels. They finish the product together. They flood it across the southern border, either with between the ports of entry or in the ports of entry. And West Virginia ends up being a dumping ground for a lot of this fentanyl. And we lead the nation per capita in terms of fentanyl death. It's a huge problem. I call it the fentanyl menace. And we're doing everything we can as a state to push back against that, but we're not seeing any cooperation from the feds. It's a major problem. I've called for fentanyl to be listed as a weapon of mass destruction because what other thing can you call it when it's the number one cause of death for individuals between the ages of 18 and 46? So it's a big issue, and I pour a lot of time into that because I do not want to see the body bags lining up.
And I was really interested to see that you are pushing for fentanyl to be classified as a weapon of mass destruction. If it came under that classification, what would that change?
I think a couple things. First, you'd be able to get more access to some of the Department of Defense resources and other monies because we know that the enforcement situation is really perilous. In fact, I look at this, there are multiple points that we have to focus on going after the fentanyl issue. Certainly there's the local and the state piece, but then you have to deal with what is Homeland Security doing? And we actually have sued the Homeland Security Department because they're not doing their job. What is the U.S. Attorney General, Merrick Garland, doing? And he needs to be emphasizing prioritizing fentanyl prosecutions in a way that they're not right now. And then what is Blinken doing? Anytime you have more designations and you have more resources, I think the pressure is going to amp up on those three cabinet secretaries to do their job because right now it's not only Mayorkas who's failing, it's Garland and it's Blinken. Blinken goes to China, and this is a low-level priority, and yet the Chinese are very culpable here. We need everyone to step up and do their job, and it's my job to make sure that they're accountable.
Yeah. Well, and in West Virginia, you all are tackling not just the fentanyl crisis, but the opioid crisis as well. Opioids are a major issue in West Virginia, and Attorney General, your state just won an $83 million lawsuit against Walgreens over the opioid crisis. Explain what exactly happened here.
Absolutely. So we take the enforcement of the law very seriously. In fact, we had a panel at CPAC about law and disorder as well, because so many people actually ignore the law when it doesn't suit their political agenda. That's not how we work in West Virginia. We're blind to political affiliation and economic status and the enforcement of these laws. And we saw, as we looked at the pharmaceutical supply channel, that there were a number of entities that were just not following the law. They didn't have the right control mechanisms in place and the right type of practices to make sure they were adhering to the rules. So we filed lawsuits against the manufacturers, pharmacies, and the wholesalers. And now West Virginia has the number one per capita rated settlements in the country. But what's most important about that is that how the money gets spent, because I know in the past money has come in for different purposes and that it can go down the black hole and it's not really going to the right purpose. We need to make sure that the money is tackling the problem holistically from a supply, a demand, and educational perspective. And we have a first of its kind initiative in West Virginia. We're going to have a private foundation driving this, and they're going to get to have a board, a lot of people to make some really smart decisions, and we're not going to let government screw this up anymore.
Well, and tragically, we know that opioids, they're not just affecting the current generation, but they're affecting the next generation as well. because when a mother is pregnant with a baby who's addicted, the mother is addicted to opioids, there are really hard and tragic effects that happen to that child when they're born, correct?
There are. I mean, we have some, it's called neonatal abstinence syndrome. And in fact, we have some facilities in West Virginia. We have Lily's Place out in Huntington, and they really focus on a lot of those newborns who, of course, through no fault of their own, are born addicted. And it's a serious problem. One of the things I'm most excited about with the settlement dollars is that it's really going to be a much more thoughtful approach. And we have to make sure that these babies are going to get the help that they need, but also that there's the right investment in education, prevention, and law enforcement, because our state's getting overrun by all this fentanyl and these other products, and in part because the feds aren't doing their jobs.
Yeah. Well, and in relation to West Virginia protecting the unborn,
Yeah.
you all are also standing up to protect life. So, West Virginia has a law on the books outlawing banning abortion after Roe v. Wade was overturned. That
Right.
law was set to go back into effect, but it was challenged. Explain what is happening here.
So last fall, the legislature, in the wake of the Dobbs decision, passed a law. They went in and they actually compromised and put something together, but then they passed a law, and I think it's a very defensible law, consistent with the Dobbs decision. And Dobbs effectively returned the question of abortion back to the states. So now you're starting to see some gamesmanship. I think that's being played by the other side. They're trying to get the FDA and kind of change and convert what the FDA's role. And last time I checked, Congress didn't give FDA the decision to decide abortion policy. The court sprung it back to the states. Congress hasn't acted. So we're defending multiple challenges against our new state law. I feel very good on the substance, that what we're doing is consistent with Dobbs. It's consistent with the Constitution. Also consistent with the state's regulation of the practice of medicine, which historically they've had. And so I'm excited about this because I think we're right. Now, I can't predict when and where we'll win. I do think eventually we're going to win this case, but we're going to have forceful opposition because these guys want to ignore a lot of the victories that occurred over the last year. And I think it's important that states step up and defend precious life. If ever there's an area to regulate, it's when you have unborn children who actually have no other advocates for themselves. So that's part of the reason I'm so motivated to step up and fight, and why I'm pro-life.
And where does the fight stand right now? Is this a case that you could foresee ending up in the Supreme Court? How far could this go?
Well, it's possible. Right now, we're at the district court level for these two cases in federal court in West Virginia, and we're obviously defending that. We've intervened to make sure the state has a proper defense. So we're in the early stages now. And so we'll be fighting over this, I'm sure, for the next few years.
Okay, wow. Well, this is not the only lawsuit that West Virginia is involved in right now. West Virginia is co-leading a coalition of more than 20 states in a lawsuit against the Environmental Protection Agency. Why are you all suing the EPA?
Well, this is a really cool thing in Virginia. So when the Heartlands start to listen to the show and they say, what are these people doing suing the federal government? Imagine if you have an administration that's trying to regulate your backyard ditch or an ephemeral stream, and they're trying to regulate it in a manner similar to the way the Mississippi, the Potomac, the Ohio, navigable bodies of water are regulated. The Constitution gives the federal government the power to regulate interstate commerce. These guys, through the Biden administration, are trying to regulate down to the backyard puddle. And that's absurd on every level. So I've been working with my colleagues across the country to say, look, this is ridiculous. And in fact, this happened before under the Obama administration. They also trotted out a really aggressive, crazy rule, and the court struck that down. And I was out in front helping to lead push back against that. I then worked with President Trump, who had a much more reasonable rule, much more consistent with the rule of law and the role that local authorities and states play in managing their own resources. So, but now Biden administration's stepping up again, and they're pushing this. So we went in with a number of states into North Dakota, and we filed for an injunction to stop that. I'm once again very hopeful we're going to prevail. We've won in the past. I don't see what's really going to change here. So I think we're going to be able to stop them again. But it's a shame that AG offices have to keep going after this lawless administration, but that is what they are. and I'm going to have to keeping their feet to the fire.
And there's another coalition that West Virginia is a part of. Several states have filed a lawsuit against Attorney General Merrick Garland and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives over a ruling on pistol braces. Now, a pistol brace is, or also referred to as a stabilizing brace, and it's an accessory that's added to a pistol that allows it to be fired one-handed. West Virginia is challenging these regulations to stabilizers. Why?
Well, because this is yet another example of the federal government. There was a policy in place for a long while where people recognized that there might be seniors, there might be individuals who are disabled who would benefit from having a pistol brace attached to the arm. It actually enables firing accuracy and helps for people who otherwise might not be able to fire a weapon. So this was all in place for a long period of time. Biden administration comes around and says, okay, even though we don't think this is a major cause of crime, I mean, I don't think most Americans think that these pistol braces are, we're going to change how we view these pistol braces. And if you use the pistol brace, we're going to now define your gun as a short barrel rifle. What that means is that if you don't register with the ATF, if you don't follow through and change this, you're going to be a felon. You're actually going to have to sign up for a registry. And it's wrong to classify these guns as short barrel rifles. No one's ever thought of doing that before. It's not going to help address crime. And so we're pushing back. That's with the coalition, I believe, about 25 states. And everyone knows you can't just change the rules of the road. If Congress wanted to give the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms Agency the power to regulate in the space, it should have done so in a clear manner, and all the court cases would indicate that.
One fun question before we let you go. Attorney General, what is one maybe little known fact about West Virginia that you'd like to share with us today?
I'll tell you, West Virginia, we're some of the most patriotic people in the country. I think we have as many more veterans per capita than any other place. We're the third most forested state in the nation. So it's kind of a really cool thing. And it's wild and wonderful. I would urge everyone to come. The beauty is only surpassed by the people that you meet in the state. And if you have a chance to come out for spring or summer, our state parks are a hidden gem. And so we'd urge people to come out. And look, even if you're visiting the nation's capital, you're in Washington, D.C., that's only 68 miles from Harper's Ferry, a place which was fought over, went back and forth in the Civil War between the Unions and the Confederacy 7 times. You have so much history in our state and amazing people, and it's beautiful. Come on. If you come to visit, you might be wanting to stay for a little while longer.
Wonderful. Attorney General, thank you for your time today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Virginia. Appreciate it.